everyone. Appreciate your patience. Just wanted to give a few minutes just in case there's anybody sort of logging in here a little bit late. We hope you're all healthy and well and doing as well as you can in these challenging times. Really excited about today's topic. Personally, every time I speak with Anna, I feel better about myself and the world. So I have a feeling that after this topic, you will too. Anna has an infectious spirit, and her approach to well-being is different than anything I've ever seen. But I just wanted to say our partnership with On the Goga, we're really pleased with and excited about, because you know, the work that you're doing with clients like Revzilla and Urban Outfitters and, you know, J&J and WeWork, it's just different than anything we've seen. And I think today's topic really is going to support that in the way that On the Goga is trying to think through some of these challenging issues in a completely different way. And what we like at Birch about what you do, Anna, is that it's not, when well-being is talked about, you know, the outcomes for On the Goga aren't necessarily, from our point of view, about ROI. It's about efficacy. You know, is this really helpful to your organization, your culture, and your people, and your leadership team? And how is that sort of measured? You know, real quick about Birch, we are an employee benefits consulting firm, but our philosophy is where we say it's employee benefits with soul, meaning that, you know, we really don't want to be about deductibles and PPOs and HMOs. We want to be about people, and we want to do our work in a very soulful and engaged way. And we feel that we share that philosophy with On the Goga. And so I'm just going to turn it over here, but I would say that in addition to having one of the greatest names, their logo is also one of the best that I've ever seen. And so I think that should be a great segue. But Anna, we're really excited to share this time with you today. Really grateful for it. And as I said in the beginning of the call, I never come away from a conversation with Anna not feeling better about myself or the world. So I hope everybody enjoys this topic, and I'm sure you will. Anna, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pat. You know, a quick side story on the logo. This logo changed about 1.5 years ago from the logo that it was when I first started the company. And it's been such a joy. I love this logo. It was created by a really talented artist and friend of mine out in California. So I'm glad that you like it too. But yeah, I'm really excited to kind of get into this topic really quick. Before we dive in, I just want to let all of you know out there, if you want to sit back and just listen, that's perfect. If you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them in the chat box. So you might have already found it, but if you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen and click in there, you'll be able to see a little chat button. And if you open that and make sure that your bar, the little blue bar says all panelists and attendees, you can go ahead and shoot questions out. I'm happy to answer them as we go along. So just by way of a little bit of a deeper introduction, my name is Anna Greenwald, and I am the founder and CEO here at On the Goga. I'm also our lead mindfulness coach and a registered yoga teacher. And I started On the Goga with a really simple principle in mind, our guiding principle, which is happy people do great things. And you know, when Pat speaks about our approach to well-being being a little bit different than the classic model of ROI when it comes to healthcare utilization and all of that, what we understand is, from an organizational psychology approach, the real return on investment when it comes to the well-being of your organization comes from ensuring that your people, your leaders, and your systems are functioning in a way that is healthy and promotes human happiness, because that is going to return to your organization tenfold over any cost savings that you might be able to squeeze out of this program or that program. So I want to begin today talking about a little bit of an empathy moment. Now, this is a statistic that was just released that 20 million US workers are going to be furloughed or laid off by July of 2020. That's 1 in 10 workers in the American workforce. And this was released by the Economic Policy Institute. So we can't begin having this conversation about employee furloughs without taking a moment to acknowledge that any pain, stress, anxiety that you're feeling about this situation right now, you are absolutely not alone. And especially when we're not able to be in contact with other people, the experience of needing to furlough employees or being furloughed or simply working during this time is incredibly isolating. But I want to begin here with this moment of empathy, because literally 1 in 10 people who was working in January of 2020 is not going to be working in July of 2020. Now that we have a little bit of understanding of the depth and the breadth of this challenge, I'd love to kind of take another moment to look at the situation in a little bit of a different light and talk about what a furlough actually is. And not to say that you all don't know exactly what it means to furlough someone, but when we look at the etymology, the origin of the word furlough, it actually comes from a Dutch root word that means to care for. And I think that especially during this time when you all out there are likely the ones having to have these really hard conversations and having to make these really hard decisions, furloughing someone can feel like something that you have to do, this burden. But at the end of the day, most of us are making these decisions because we need to figure out how to get our business from point A to point B and have jobs for our employees as best as we can by the end of this challenge, which is predominantly out of our control. Now, that doesn't mean that furloughing someone isn't a really challenging thing to do, but it does shed a little bit of light on how we want to look at what we're going to talk about today as an opportunity to care for our workers in a new way. Because at the end of the day, this all comes down to a question of employee experience, right? Your furloughed employees are still your employees, right? And how we handle employee experience right now is going to make a huge impact on our businesses moving forward, especially from the HR and leadership perspective. But the situation takes a toll on everyone. And again, a moment of empathy just for HR and leadership out there right now. Right now, all HR leaders are serving this dual role of caretaker, right? The person that needs to have all the answers. For many people, especially if you're managing teams across the country, you have to have an in-depth understanding of really ever-changing rules and laws and regulations across the entire country. That in and of itself would be a challenge. You're also supposed to be the moral support for your entire team and leading communications to keep people engaged. And you're also the ones that have to have the conversation about furloughing. That is really challenging, and it's super important to call out that challenge for what it is, because no matter how much experience you have in your life, in your career, this situation is going to throw us into experiences where we are beginners again. And that can feel really kind of awkward at first to think about that, but it's a reality. And when we are beginners, it's going to create this feeling of discomfort and challenge. And yes, that's happening for the employees that we're furloughing, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but it's also happening for us, and we can't move forward without acknowledging that. Because if we can acknowledge our own challenge during this time, it actually makes it easier for us to have empathy for the people that we're managing and leading. So when we talk about engaging furloughed employees and supporting furloughed employees, as I said, we're talking about an opportunity to begin again with our employee experience. And what we want to do is build trust, support, and connection. So we're going to go through all 3 of these different strategies of engagement and talk about what they are, why they're important, and how we're going to do them. So the first strategy for building trust, support, and connection is communication. Now, everyone's situations right now with furloughs, with who's working, maybe you have remote workers, maybe you have workers that aren't able to come into the office. Maybe you have a return date for your workers. Maybe you don't have a return date for your workers. The number one tool for keeping your employees engaged is calling out the challenge. So what does this look like in practice? Well, first of all, we need to have consistent, clear communication from the top down. When you consider any relationship, right? Being engaged in conversation about challenging times is crucial for moving towards them to ensure that people are building trust. And when it comes to leadership communication, now, what's funny about the situation is these are best practices always, but the situation is a magnifying glass that makes them even more important. So best practices here are really ensuring that you have a consistent method of communicating with your furloughed employees. So whether this looks like an email that's coming out, whether this looks like a Zoom call or a conference call, whether this looks like a Slack channel or some sort of internal employee communication, just because someone is at home and isn't expected to respond right away doesn't mean we shouldn't be giving updates that provide vision, empathy, and encouragement. So a couple of breaking down the best practices for communication. Having it come from the executive team is ideal, whether that is the executive team from an HR perspective or whether that is the CEO of the company. Someone for whom an employee gets that communication and thinks, this is a reliable and trustworthy source, and I feel that I'm being cared for because they're taking the time to communicate with me. So when we talk about what these communications should involve, the number one thing is honest and up-to-date information about the situation. So this looks like providing information and reasoning about new decisions that are being made, identifying the risks and decisions that the company is trying to protect against, and how these decisions are specifically designed to support and strengthen the individuals that are currently furloughed and the organization. And what this does is it creates a sense of trust and honesty from those furloughed employees, from the top leadership, who at the end of the day are the ones guiding the mission and the ones who define the culture. These communications should also include the practice of empathy. Now, empathy is a word that we love to talk about on the Goga, especially when it pertains to leadership, because oftentimes we think empathy is something that we either have or we don't have, or we feel or we don't feel, but it's really a practice. And empathy in communication looks like providing emotional support tools and even skill trainings to individuals who are currently furloughed or who need it during this time, because even if they're not coming into the office, right? The furlough is a temporary leave of absence, but you're still an employee. And so you still need to feel cared for, right? So it can simply be a once a week email saying, hey, everyone, we're missing you. Here's an update about the situation. Here's one emotional support tool that we have for you today. Whether that's pointing them towards a really helpful article or a resource you found on your own. We send out emails to our clients' employees once a month or once a week generally that have a meditation that they can do, or a resource for managing their personal finances, but giving them a tool that is not an obligation, but something that helps them feel supported and cared for. And finally, in this is this idea of encouragement. So right now, and we probably all feel this as individuals, but one of the hardest things about the situation is that it can feel really discouraging, especially because we don't know when it's going to end and it's so out of our control. But adding this element of encouragement into your emails does not mean painting on a smile and saying, oh my gosh, like everything's going to be great. Things are really going better right now. Maybe they're not. Maybe the challenge is getting worse in some ways, but this looks like helping individuals understand the power that they do have and the benefits in engaging with the resources that you're providing them with, and communicating a motivated vision for the future in light of the changes that are happening. So helping them see this is where it is now, but this is where we're moving towards. And remember here that how we choose to communicate matters. So really try to look at this to make sure that your systems of communication that you're using are consistent. If people don't know whether they're supposed to get an email or if they're supposed to log on to your intranet, it can be confusing for them. It can feel like overwhelm of resources. So we encourage you to pick one system of communication where you have a consistent weekly communication or daily, whatever that looks like for you, where people know they can go, even if they're not working, to feel supported and cared for.
And,
the other, yeah, go ahead, Pat.
If you don't mind me just jumping in real quick,
Yeah.
just, you know, those examples are really helpful, you know, particularly just to you know, the challenge of maintaining alignment and engagement while, you know, technically they don't physically exist, organizationally exist with a furloughed individual. What have been, you know, do you have any like client examples? You had mentioned those emails, like what types of communications or emails have resonated the best, or
Yeah.
have you seen be most useful?
Absolutely. So very tactically, what we found is the most helpful is a weekly email from executive leadership, ideally the CEO, that's kind of a state of the union. Here's what's going on. Generally, we encourage people to include bright spots or pieces of acknowledgement in these emails. So, you know, acknowledging a certain department, acknowledging even a certain individual who's been doing a great job, and kind of giving an update on the state of the organization. And then a weekly update from HR with support tools and resources. So whether that's, hey, you know, did you know that we have an EAP and here's the ways to use it? Or, hey, here's one simple tool that even just a recipe that you can use this week that we hope makes you feel happier and healthier. Another tool that we find is really helpful is setting up a survey where people can provide input on what they need, or maybe even what's been really helpful for them, and then sharing that back out. So an example we have of that is at one of our clients in Center City, Philadelphia, we have one of those feedback forums where people can share wonderful things that have happened for them this week. And then every week, we put out an email blast indicating all of the great stuff that's been going on in people's lives, because it doesn't cancel out the bad things, but it tends to make them easier to, well, it couples it with this sense of gratitude, which makes it easier to move through these situations. So that's a great question, Pat. And again, if you guys have any specific questions, feel free to let me know. Another example, actually very practically about communication, is setting up spaces for listening. So setting up a weekly Zoom call, non-mandatory, but senior leadership participation in these is crucial for effectiveness. So what we generally do is we recommend setting up about an hour-long just hangout time later in the day, usually between 3 to 5 p.m., where it's driven by senior leadership. You can log on, and the first 30 minutes is just kind of for here's what's going on in the organization, what's been going on in your lives, asking people what's been the best part of your week, what's been the hardest part of your week, creating those moments for empathy. And then the second half, we usually do some type of team building mini game. So we'll usually do a trivia, or we have, you know, at-home scavenger hunts or stuff like that get people involved. And then what we'll also do is we'll usually do like a little $10 to $25 gift for the winner of whatever that game is. And again, the purpose of this is simply to help people cognitively keep that through line of, oh yeah, this is my team, this is my family. And what we see a lot is that people are incredibly grateful for this time, because for the most part, we're all just in our homes seeing the same people every day. And especially when you're furloughed, that isolation gets even more distinct. The other thing I want to really reiterate here is that when we're thinking about engaging furloughed employees, this is not a situation where we're putting a Band-Aid on something that's happening just right now. This is an opportunity as leaders, especially in HR, to begin again. So any type of reboarding that you're going to be doing, any type of communications internally that you're going to be having, these are cultural norms and boundaries that you are setting now, but they are going to become your new normal. So as a leader, it's important to understand this is not something that is added to your workload that you're going to have to do now and never revisit again. These are opportunities to create new systems. So especially furloughed employees, if you are starting to create a plan of how to bring people back into the workforce, consider if you had a blank slate at a new organization, how would you do employee onboarding in a way that really worked for your team. And do that now with your employees. That system that you create for bringing people back on board, helping them with mental readiness, setting new boundaries and cultural norms about the way that they do their work. All of those things, you're going to be able to cut and paste for any new employees that you have coming in. And if you take the time to do that now, not only is that going to give your employees a reset and a reinvigoration around your mission and vision and values, which is something that we really encourage people to tie into this conversation, but you're going to be able to take that and use those systems for onboarding new employees in the future. So don't just think about this as how can we engage these people now to bring them back on and then go back to the way things used to be. Think about this as an opportunity to get excited about building new systems that are going to enhance the people operations of your organization. A really crucial part here that we can't skip over is equipping employees and managers with skills. Now, this goes into a re-onboarding plan for your furloughed employees, which if you're looking for practical tips about that, obviously you can follow up with us, but it's really similar to regular onboarding, best practices for regular onboarding. Imagine that these people are coming back into the workforce or coming into the workforce at your organization for the first time. What skills do they need? What information are they going to need to get set up, from the emotional to the technology? Are they going to need access to their emails again? How are you going to communicate those things? But when it comes to making sure that people are truly set up, right now, very laser focused and targeted trainings for your employees and your leadership are going to be crucial. Now, this looks like equipping people with tools for managing stress, helping them create a refreshed mindset and mental readiness for coming back into the workforce. One of the things that we're going to be rubbing up against right now is people saying, I've been home for this whole time. Maybe I don't want to come back to work, right? How do we help set them up and cognitively prime them to come back into the workforce? And so targeted trainings around that. From a management perspective, flexible management is going to be huge right now. If we come back into the workforce and try to do things the way that we've always been doing them, we're going to run up against conflict that's going to end up taking more time to undo than it would to set up trainings like this as people are being re-onboarding, or even just slightly before they become re-onboarded. Remotely. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a real neat, and again, I apologize for interrupting. I think this is a neat opportunity to talk about the re-onboarding or the ability to correlate or re-engage people or continue to educate people about the benefit programs they have in a different light.
Yeah.
Again, getting away from, the traditional, which carrier are we with, or PPOs or HMOs or in-network, out-of-network, deductibles. We posted something on LinkedIn today that came from EB News, and it talked through, sort of 4 digital mental health platforms, that are available: like Headspace, Ginger, Silver Cloud. These are things that a lot of our employers weren't looking at prior to this crisis.
Yep.
And now they are. And I think that's a good thing. And you could look at telemedicine as really the low-hanging fruit, where telemedicine had a 1% to 2% utilization rate, and now everybody's using telemedicine.
Absolutely.
We have to. So I think there is an opportunity here to sort of, when we re-onboard or bring folks back, to talk about the broader benefit programs and well-being programs in a different way. And if that communication or that relationship existed with the furloughed employee, as you were talking about, weekly while they were furloughed, I just think that creates a new engagement opportunity.
Absolutely. If you take one thing away from this conversation today, it's let this be an opportunity to begin again. Because like Pat's saying, reconsidering your benefits packages, and that's something that Birch and on the Goga can absolutely help you with. How do we frame what we have? And how do we choose specific resources? And, not a giant suite of services, but very tactical resources to provide for people that make us the employer of choice, that actually re-engage people with new motivation for what they're going to do in the future. And to Pat's point, and to kind of wrap this up, a great article just published in Forbes a few days ago cited some new research that said new employee engagement research reveals that employees' mindset, like resilience, optimism, etc., actually matters more than having a great manager, right? And I think what this situation is really showing us is the real impact and effect that mental well-being and our emotional well-being can have on our teams. So start small. This is the beginning of an ongoing process and opportunity for enhancing your culture. And you know, feel free to reach out. We actually have a free resource for anyone any company can access this right now. It's on our website. It's our starter kit, and you get a free conversation with an organizational psychologist, a free workshop trial. And the purpose of this is really to provide people with tools they don't have to start off investing in, to really test the waters of what could this look like for us? How can we make our teams happier and healthier as a result of this really challenging situation? And that simple shift in mindset can take this incredible challenge and turn it into an opportunity for future growth and development of your organization. So that's all I've got for you today. But Pat, if you have any questions, or if anybody wants to stick around and ask any questions, I'm super happy to stick around and answer them.
I was just going to ask, if you wouldn't mind, Anna, could you just spend a second in pre-corona days, when you were doing on-site wellness and well-being programs, how that worked? Because I think that's very different than what I had seen previously. And And secondarily, like, could you just spend a minute, in addition to the communications and some of the helpful tips and tricks that you mentioned today on the webinar, like how your model has sort of transitioned a little bit here in a work from home environment?
Absolutely. That's actually a really good question, because it kind of plays to everything that we've talked about. I think a lot of people have encountered the situation, and organizations understand that the well-being of their teams is really important right now. But at On the Goga, one thing we've always understood is that true well-being, like each of us listening right now, for us to feel more in control of our lives, happier, right? Truly happier. We need to have the skills and knowledge to create a life that's meaningful for us. And so when we look at creating employee well-being programs within organizations, we're really talking about creating new employee experiences. What is the day-to-day experience like for me at my job? And that looks like everything from having a rich benefits plan and understanding how I'm supported through my benefits, whether that's traditional medical benefits or fringe benefits, even like you were saying. But it's also, how do I feel when I interact with my team, right? Do I feel like my leadership is caring for and supporting me? And so when we work with organizations, we meet them and we begin by listening. We just say, who are you? What is your culture? Who are your people? And what do you want? What do you feel like your real potential is as an organization? And then we take the tactical approach of kind of understanding what's the vision, where are we, and how do we get there? And so what it looks like on site is programming that actually comes to your office, and that can be programming from workshops to designing well-being rooms to leadership trainings. And as this whole situation has kind of unfolded, we looked at all the different things that we could do to serve people. And, a lot of people are looking for, simple, like, let's just download an app and do that. And that's great, but we really need to think about what people are going to actually engage with. And so what we chose to do was basically take all of our most impactful skill building workshops and experiences and bring them to the virtual and help people stay engaged and create virtual workshops and team building events that people actually really enjoy. And what we've been finding is that when we focus on just creating wonderful experiences is the same way that we always do, engagement skyrockets, whether people are working remote or working from home. And the number one piece of feedback that we get right now is, it's so nice to know that even with all of this happening, I have 1 hour to connect with my team and know that my organization is doing this for me because they really care. So, how we're helping clients right now, it looks very different in terms of the medium, but very similar in terms of understanding your organizational goals, understanding your culture, and then helping your HR team have the tools and support and hands they need to build that employee experience for each individual.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, and as I said, you know, I always come away from our conversations really inspired. I have a full page of notes. And I just wanted to, before we wrap up, make sure if anybody has a question or would like to text a question or ask a question, please feel welcome. If not, what we'll do is we'll circulate contact information and additional information after the webinar. So if you'd like to reach out to Anna offline, by all means, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. She's a friend of the organization, and she's been really, really helpful for our clients and for Birch. So Anna, I can't thank you enough for your time, for everybody that took the time to dial in. Thank you for your time as well. We wish everyone the best, and obviously stay in good health and well-being. And we'll get through this together and look forward to seeing everybody in person eventually. But Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to meet all of you out there. Don't hesitate to reach out. My direct email is just Anna, ANNA, @onthegoga.com.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.